In my experience, three forces shape how projects move off track: complexity, change, and opacity. But I like to separate them so that they're easier to manage. Let's start with complexity. Complexity arises when cause and effect relationships only become clear after events unfold. So you can only understand something once it's happened. That's Snowden's Cynefin framing, which, since complexity in projects affects decision-making, I find most useful. Typical signals of complexity include conflicting expert views, unstable assumptions, unclear dependencies between packages, and difficulty sizing exposure. In large projects, it shows up in practical ways. For example, a technically correct design decision in one package can disrupt sequencing elsewhere. Or contractual risk allocations can behave differently once real site conditions emerge. Or external stakeholders can introduce constraints that trigger unpredictable knock-on effects. These conditions are especially visible early in projects when ambition is clear but reality is still forming. None of this is necessarily reflective of poor management or disorder. It's a normal condition in projects with many organizations, long time frames, and high technical uncertainty. To once more paraphrase Willie Tan, professor of the Department of the Built Environment at the National University of Singapore, a project can be extremely technical and still be predictable. Complexity means unpredictable, which isn't the same thing as difficult but predictable. Engineers deal with the latter every day, problems where outcomes are knowable with sufficient expertise. However, those problems can initially behave like complex ones. For example, a new set of detailed engineering drawings may interact unpredictably with the rest of the project when first introduced. Only after those interactions are explored does the situation become predictable. This distinction matters because it determines how decisions should be made and how projects should be managed. Major projects are a shifting landscape. Some areas stabilize quickly, whereas others remain uncertain for long periods. New shocks can introduce complexity even late in delivery. Research on megaproject strategy suggests that projects evolve through episodes with different dynamics rather than progressing in a smooth linear path. This matters because leadership responses must change as the context changes. Project management approaches that work well in predictable conditions may be ineffective when uncertainty arises again. The real challenge is misunderstanding what kind of uncertainty is present and how it behaves over time. The danger is not complexity itself. The danger is treating complex situations as if they were predictable. When organizations assume certainty too early, forecasts become brittle, commitments become difficult to adjust, and governance may prioritize reassurance over insight. Assumptions become embedded in budgets, contracts, and expectations. Correcting them later can be costly and disruptive. Understanding whether something is complex or complicated is not just theoretical. It determines how organizations should deploy expertise. This is especially important since projects change from complex to complicated over time, and especially between phases. Experts are most effective when cause and effect relationships are stable. Deploying a specialist steelworks engineer in an early concept design is a good idea, but the answers she can give you are subject to change as the project design evolves, i.e. there's uncertainty built in. On the other hand, once the design is agreed and the conditions are known, she can act with more certainty and provide detailed steelwork. In phase projects, this is the difference between the exploratory early phases and the mid-project detailed design phase. In conditions of relative certainty, deep knowledge produces reliable forecasts and robust solutions. But when outcomes are still unknowable, expertise alone cannot create certainty, except through exploration, observation, and adaptation. So why does this matter to executives, project managers, and decision makers? The greatest exposure occurs when organizations make large commitments while understanding is weakest. This includes go or no-go investment decisions, funding approvals, delivery model selection, risk allocation structures, and governance design. If expectations of certainty are too high at this stage, organizations can lock themselves into positions that are difficult to unwind. Recognizing complexity allows leaders to avoid forcing precision prematurely. It allows them to stage specialist involvement more effectively. It allows them to reduce rework caused by early overconfidence and improve the credibility of forecasts over time. In this sense, complexity is not only a source of risk, it's also a signal about how decisions should be made. Misreading complexity can lead to cost escalation, schedule instability, reduced strategic value, erosion of stakeholder confidence, and ineffective use of expertise. Handled well, complexity becomes a source of insight. You can find out what you need to learn and properly deploy expertise. As you might imagine, while complexity itself is manageable, it becomes challenging to manage if there is significant change, both in the information and the context, or opacity is present, preventing folks in your team seeing the project for what it is. Those interactions between complexity, change, and opacity multiply risk.